year, for one of my college classes, we were learning about the Salem witch trials. Now, of course, because I'm a pagan, everyone assumes this is supposed to be the most important thing in my life. In fact, pretty much every discussion started with, "Now, Helen, would you like to give us your perspective on the topic?" Well, not exactly. You see, I've never really understood the Salem witch trials in the first place. If you think about it, it's all really quite silly how one little thing, one little comment that one kid made could lead to mass murder and persecution. However, I assume that this wasn't really something that was likely to ever affect me personally in my life. If there is one thing I wish I could go back and tell myself, it's that this would become permanent in my life. This last summer, I worked at a computer tech camp. For the most part, because I figured that if I worked with mostly nerd kids, I wouldn't have to go outside, or fall off zip lines, or get pushed in pools. At first I thought I was there to be a regular counselor, but I soon realized I was actually there to fulfill the role of basically a glorified school nurse. Which for nerd kids leads to some interesting injuries. For example, the kid that would cut himself on the keys of his keyboard every day in programming class. I started stockpiling purely princess band-aids just for this kid. And every day he would come up to me and just say, "I don't know how it happened, but..." Every night, I would go back to my room. You see, because we lived in a dorm, the room that I was living out of was also my office, which meant that at any time of the night, a kid could come up to my room at 3 a.m. in the morning, knock on the door, and I'd be back on duty. Which sounds great, having a bed in your office, until you realize it also means that all the kids throw up on the bed in your office. So one day, I'm sitting there in my office, pretending that I'm actually working, but I'm not, because I rarely was, because nerd camp. When I hear a knock on my door, I open my door, and there is my favorite kid, a 7-year-old boy named Thomas, a complete angel. He looks up at me and he goes, "I can't sleep." Okay, Thomas, why can't you sleep? He goes, "There are flying snails in my room." There are what? There are flying snails and I can't sleep because they're making noise. All right, so I have this kid take me to his room where the flying snails are, and there's 3 kids all sitting up on their bed, and all 3 of them tell me they can't sleep, there are flying snails, they're pink, they are big, they may possibly spit acid. So there I am, looking under the bed for the snails. No snails there. Looking in the closet for the snails, looking in the ceiling vents, climbing on top of their bunk beds. No snails. Negative snails. I tell them, well, maybe the snails left. And everything is fine. The next day I walk out of my hallway and I go to check on them, and I find 3 kids sleeping out in the hallway. I ask them, "Guys, why didn't you sleep in your room?" They go, "The snails went from their room to our room." It turned out somehow during the night, the news of the snails had spread. In fact, the news of the snails had spread so far that now all 3 rooms down the hallway knew about the snails. That next day we took preventative measures. My friend took duct tape and climbed on top of the beds, and we taped every single crack of every single wall on every single room so that the snails could not possibly get through. In fact, we were informed that this way the snails would get stuck to the tape, and they simply wouldn't be able to get through because snails are impervious to tape, because kid logic. Now, my co-counselors and I are sitting in the staff room, and we figure we could have some fun with this. This could become fun. So my friend decides we're going to have a full-out exorcism for the snails. So my friend takes a salt shaker from the cafeteria and starts to put a line of salt around all of the kids' rooms. The kids come outside and they go, "What's with the salt?" She goes, "Well, you know, snails are afraid of salt." Now, I'm pretty sure this is actually slugs. But I guess in this case, that worked too. The next morning, I received a phone call from an angry parent who told me, "My kid says that there are snails in the rooms and you aren't doing anything, and he can't sleep because of the snails." Now, I didn't know snails made noises, but apparently they do, and they sound like possessed cats or something. In fact, the snails made so much noise that by the second week of the session, Every single kid believed in the snails. We actually had an injury because one kid got sprayed in the eye by salt water from a makeshift water gun that the kids had made to fend off the snails. On the last day, one of the kids runs up to me. In fact, it's Thomas, this sweet, adorable kid from the first day, and he hands me a piece of paper and runs off. I open up the piece of paper, and on it is just the words, "I made it all up. I'm sorry." And this brings us back to the Salem witch trials. You see, one small action, one seemingly inconsequential action can cause an avalanche. Of course, by the time we had figured this out, it was simply too far. And that was when I had realized that I had been part of the Salem witch trial.